And we are live for another time here today. I'm joined by Eliza Orlins, who is a career public defender in Manhattan. Our first time having a conversation here on Substack today. Eliza, how are you doing today?
I'm so good, but I'm so excited to be talking to you on Substack. You are half the reason why I really decided to make a big push on this platform. You've been so encouraging and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that more creators need to be over here in general. This is a great space. I really do love this platform, and I'm trying to get as many people as possible to come over here. So, I had a few different topics I wanted to talk to you about today. There is so much going on in the news right now. It's kind of hard to narrow it down to figure out exactly what to talk about. But I want to talk to you first about the Democratic Party a little bit. There was a Gallup poll that came out last week that said that confidence in Democratic leadership has actually dropped to an all-time low, and a lot of people are kind of worried that the Democrats really aren't meeting the moment. Now, just as for a little bit of context here, I do think that there have been more and more Democrats who have been stepping up recently, so I think there's a little bit of nuance to this conversation. But at large, a lot of people are a little kind of concerned that maybe more Democrats aren't doing enough to combat everything that we are seeing with the Trump administration right now. Chuck Schumer came on to CNN this past weekend and said that he sent a strongly worded letter to Donald Trump in regards to everything that's been going on recently. And I thought it was a meme, but he was very serious. Eliza, what are your thoughts though? Like, how do you feel about how the Democrats are kind of like meeting this moment right now, particularly with the leadership?
Well, I mean, I have expressed my frustrations with the leadership, especially with Chuck Schumer personally, because I felt, for the Democrats to not use that moment where they were going to pass this CR, where they could have easily obstructed in that circumstance. And
Yeah,
instead, they just gave away the House for no reason. And I think they have to be using every tool possible, even things that some folks are calling performative, actually
yeah,
do make a real difference and make a real impact. But just capitulating to the Republicans is not it. That is not the leadership we need in this moment. And I have been, like many others, increasingly frustrated with some Democrats, but I am also heartened to see a number of Democrats who have been really pretty extraordinary, who've really been stepping up in a way that is very impressive.
yeah. No, I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of people stepping up more recently, especially in the last like month or so. We're seeing Bernie Sanders, AOC going on their Fight the Oligarchy tour. I've been seeing Maxwell Frost. He has been out there all over the place. Jasmine Crockett's been a staple from the beginning. I'm
Totally.
seeing
But you can't
Rokana
leave.
go out there. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. But you can't leave out the fact that Senator Van Hollen flew to
right.
El Salvador, demanded to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is
Yes,
really fighting hard. And I think, we can't discount what Governor Pritzker's doing these days, who is
yes.
really, I think, been such a force. And, I'm saying this as a lifelong New Yorker that I'm admiring the leadership in Chicago and also in Boston, in Massachusetts. Like Senator Warren is out there speaking out and, I'm really impressed with some of the Democrats and less so with others.
Yeah, so I think for me, what this comes down to is the fact that it seems like if we were to go through a list right now, it probably feels like it's closer to maybe 20, maybe 30 that we are seeing who are consistently kind of going out there, using their voice, using their platform, using the pulpit, essentially, the platform that they have. And there's over 250 of them in Congress. And so, I mean, what what do Democrats need to be doing right now that they're not doing, like in your opinion?
Well, I think that some of this is that there's things that some of us have been screaming about for a decade, but that the Democrats are finally getting on board. I mean, you can talk about Joe Rogan, you can talk about the Tates, you can talk about all of these right wing, Candace Owens, all these right wing creators who have
Yeah,
really built up huge platforms and who are able to elevate their electeds through those platforms. And on the left, we have had a lot harder of a time doing that. It's more decentralized, but folks are starting to get the message and say, okay, I have to be media literate. I have to be social media literate. I have to be
right.
out there doing direct to camera videos showing the things that I am doing. And it's actually been really impressive seeing them partner with big content creators on the left and really start making a concerted effort to get clips out there, to do lives, to do big actions that do create buzz on social media because more and more young people aren't subscribed to cable television. They're not watching MSNBC, so it matters when people are on social media.
Yeah. There is, I think, a constant conversation that goes on about like, oh, well, the Democrats, their real problem is they're just not getting their message out there. And other people will say like, okay, it's not just that; they're also having a lot of the wrong messages in a lot of places. W- Where do you kind of fall on that? Do you think it's kind of more of that? Oh, they just need to like really get out in front of these people and talk more on TikTok and talk more on Instagram and do YouTube videos, or is it a sense of like maybe they're a little disconnected from their base? Because I got to tell you it for me, it feels like there's kind of a bit of both going on here, but how do you feel about it?
I agree with you. I think it's a bit of both, and I think it depends on the person because I think
Yeah,
sometimes it's the message and sometimes it's the messenger that is
yeah,
the issue. And I think sometimes the fact of the matter is the Republican budget that was proposed today, the reason why uh, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Booker did a sit in for over 12 hours on the Capitol steps yesterday was because the Republicans are trying to cut 880 billion with a B dollars, which is going to require huge cuts to Medicaid, which is going to
yeah,
require cuts to food assistance for children and veterans, which is going to require um, you know, it's like Medicaid to seniors. I mean, it's just there's so much, and mothers, it's just so much that is going to hurt the average person, everyday working Americans, that it's the Democrats not getting that message out that has been so problematic because that is a popular message. They are supporting the overwhelming majority of Americans. People want that stuff. People don't want SNAP benefits cut. They don't want food assistance cut for children. Most people aren't heartless and cruel, but the Democrats aren't getting out there being like, this is what the Republicans are actually trying to do. And that's why I like really, even though some people called it performative, I loved what Jeffries and Booker did yesterday, spending over 12 hours highlighting the stories of real Americans, really having families sit with them of children with disabilities and talk about how this is going to impact their lives and their families.
yeah. I think this kind of comes back to the conversation that we were having just a second ago about getting their message out there to different people and to more people, because it's not just that like people don't really know what the Republicans are trying to do. I think it's also the fact that the Republicans have an amazingly powerful machine behind them. Like they are able to go out there and propagate their message in completely
Yeah,
misinformation and disinformation across the entire like internet spectrum. I mean, through the podcast
exactly.
circuit, through on X, I mean, on YouTube. I mean, everywhere you see it. They're able to go on all these different platforms and basically tell you like, oh, we're not really cutting Medicaid. We're getting those able-bodied men back to work. Like, oh, we're not cutting SNAP benefits. We're trying to clean up government waste here. Like they are able to essentially lie about what they are doing and tell millions and millions of people about said lie. And before anyone can even fact check them, like there's so many people who already believe the Republicans are doing this benevolent thing. So
Right.
I just wondering like what it's going to take in order for I think Democrats to essentially create something just as powerful to combat all of the disinformation. I think that that has to be paramount going forward.
I completely agree. And listen, we are a decade behind. The Republicans have been
Yeah,
building this media infrastructure on the right for over a decade. I mean, Turning Point USA, if you look at the way that these
right.
PragerU, all these right-wing platforms have been building for such a long time that it's very difficult for the Democrats to compete with that. But I
Yeah,
do think that finally we are seeing certain stories break through. I mean, we've already talked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but that
right.
story has broken through. Some of the Pete Hegseth stuff seems to have broken through. I think the arrest of a judge is very alarming to a lot of people, although maybe not quite enough
Not
yet, because
enough.
that is so deeply disturbing to me. And then, the deportation of American citizen children, toddlers, a 4-year old with metastatic cancer. I mean, the cruelty is unimaginable. And I hope that more and more these stories start taking hold and that the average person is like, oh, wow, I have to engage. And the Democrats and the Republicans are not the same.
Yeah, I want to come back to that judge question here for a second, but I see someone here in the comments who says the question becomes why are the Democrats a decade behind? That's honestly a great question. I
Well, I
really don't know the answer to that. I mean, because I feel like on one hand, Eliza, it's like it feels like it's so obvious that their tactics for how they were trying to get their message out there were being ineffective. And on the other hand, it's almost like maybe they knew and they just didn't care. I mean, like this comes back to the leadership question again, right? Because I
yeah.
think a lot of people in the Democratic Party understood that what they were doing wasn't working. They're kind of taking it upon themselves to do something different. And on the other hand, I'm just like, is there a plan here that you're just not sharing, or is the plan to be in effect? Like what is going on here, Chuck Schumer? I really want to know the answer to that question.
I think that something that people are um the listen, I'm not sure if I'm completely correct on the facts here, and I don't
Yeah,
actually spread misinformation, so I want to fact check this, and we'll like I'll put it in the comments. But if you look at the I think it's like a mean or median or average age of Democrats, elected Democrats versus Republicans,
yeah,
Republicans invest in younger leadership. They invest
hmm,
in people who are going to be rising stars within their party. They invest in, getting people involved early, and therefore they understand the value in social media, and they really recognize that a long time ago. Whereas the
yeah,
Democrats have this, rapidly aging population leading our party, and a lot of those people are clinging to power in a way that does not allow for the youth. It's not the Bernie Sanders who's like, let me take your hand and elevate you along with me. It's
right.
other people who are like, no, no, like we need to keep our power and not allow young people to kind of rise within the party.
Yeah, it's such a huge problem. But I hope that as we continue talking about this more and more, that will kind of like force their hand to change because they're seeing just how many people are upset with the current direction of the party. I mean, I am outright seeing people who I would always describe as, like Democratic loyalists, vote blue no matter who, just like basically people who are very fervently behind the Democratic Party, just outright calling for leadership to be replaced. And so I think that they're feeling the pressure right now. I hope that it leads to more positive change. But kind of going back to that story before about the judge being arrested in Wisconsin last week, I was very shaken up by that. I mean, the precedent that that sets as far as, Donald Trump being able to say, like, basically, hey, if you don't comply with my demands, if you don't do as I tell you to do, the FBI is going to essentially act as what his new secret police. He's just going to send them wherever he wants to and just have judges arrested. That really like shook me up because it feels to me more like a harbinger of things to come rather than just an isolated story. But you're a part of the legal system here in America. Like, what was your like reactions to seeing something like that happen?
I mean, it was so deeply disturbing, so jarring.
Yeah,
This really is like these attacks on judges that started long before he took office. He's been attacking judges verbally in the press for a long
yeah,
time. Even when he had a pending sentencing, he couldn't stop himself from attacking Judge Merchan, who I appear in front of, in New York criminal court house
right.
and Supreme. Um, but like an independent judiciary is essential to maintaining a democracy. There is no democracy without that. Like, this is straight out of an authoritarian playbook, and it is so deeply scary to think about a time when judges would be actually intimidated from doing their jobs
Yeah,
when because the president is literally threatening to have them arrested. It's unbelievable. Judicial independence being under attack in this way is so scary.
yeah. No, I mean, I feel like when I was having these conversations with people in the past, they would always say things like, "Oh, there's some of the stuff that's said about Trump is kind of an exaggeration," or like people say this about him in the media, but then it's never really as bad as it seems. Like all of that is completely gone. All of that's completely gone. It's actually a lot worse than what it seems. I mean, the kind of like the decline that we are seeing at the rate that we are seeing it right now is beyond anything that even I anticipated when I saw that he got elected again last November. I mean, I thought that he would go more authoritarian. I didn't think it would be this much this fast. It is unbelievable just how quickly he has kind of essentially ushered in this era of I'm going to be a dictator. I mean, I know that he said that. I mean, I'm not saying like that we shouldn't have known that was coming, but I mean, I guess in my wildest dreams, I never thought he would just like go this far this quickly,
Oh
sending
gosh, I
U.S.
guess you didn't
citizens.
read you didn't read Project 2025.
I no, I saw it. I
I
guess
downloaded it, I
I'm
read
just
it, I was
shocked
like
that it happened this
combing through it,
fast.
and I was like, "Oh, this is the playbook and this is
Yeah,
what's going to happen." And people, as usual, said I was being hyperbolic, said
yeah,
I was overreacting, I was exaggerating, and that's,
right.
so often the way in which we get gaslit as Democrats, when we try to call out the heinous acts of Republicans, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're really overreacting. Nothing like that is actually going to happen. They're not actually trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. That's ridiculous. I mean, how many
Oh
times did
God.
I get told that? And I was like, that is exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just
No.
wild.
No, it's very scary right now. And seeing, recently how there are American citizens now being deported. We saw that news kind of come over the last few days. That absolutely like shook me up, like even more, especially some of these children are, have cancer, they're being deported out of the country. There are children now having to represent themselves in courtrooms. I've been
Yeah.
seeing videos of that circling around right now. I just don't know how you could even I guess, downplay what's going on right now. I also don't know how people are just like idly standing by and not paying attention more to the news right now. It seems like too many people are treating this as like another like a regular news cycle when it's anything but that.
Well, and I think that like circling back to why even us being on Substack having this conversation is so important. And by the way,
Yeah,
everyone who's watching us, thank you for being here. And go to the top, click the three dots, make sure you're following, subscribe to both of us because
yeah,
we're able to have these conversations that the media is not having because you are here because of a platform like this that enables us to do that
yeah.
without kind of being subjected to algorithms or the oversight. I mean, the 60 Minutes
Censorship.
thing that happened last night was just absolutely floored me as well, which,
Yeah,
a lot of people are unsubscribing to Paramount Plus now because they're like, well, if Trump is going to come after us, we have to kind of tamp down what we say. And that
right.
means our media is no longer independent. And so us being on Substack and having these conversations is just more critical than ever. And we can only do that when you all are following us and subscribe to us. So please make sure that you are subscribed to both of us. Um, but yeah, it is so scary. It is a scary, scary time. And I worry about the way in which some of this stuff is being covered by the media because I think
Yeah,
sometimes it's downplayed and they normalize it or they make it seem like Trump is just, oh, this is not that serious or that's not that serious. And they legitimize him when the reality is like, none of this is normal. This is not okay. We have to be talking about it like the urgent crisis that it is.
yes, no, absolutely. And I think when I'm having conversations with people or when I'm talking about this on my platforms, I think one of the reoccurring questions that keeps coming up for me, or to me rather, is what are we supposed to do? And I feel like there are certain days where I know how to answer that, and there's other days where I'm not exactly sure how to answer that because we are really living in an unprecedented moment. For you, though, like when people kind of come across you with that question, like how do you respond? Like, what do you think people should be doing in this moment right now to handle everything that we're seeing in the news cycle?
So I have a few answers. I have, the kind of practical answers and the kind of more theoretical answers. But I
Yeah,
think practically, the things that we need to be doing are raising our voices, making sure that this stuff doesn't fly under the radar, that make sure that people know that we see this, whether you have 5 followers, 50 followers, 500 followers, or 500,000 followers, you need to be using your platform to call out the, excuse my language, bullshit that you see happening. Because if it becomes normalized and if they think, this is okay, then they're just going to push the envelope farther and farther and farther until we don't even recognize the country in which we live. So,
yeah,
first of all, raise your voices. Follow the people who you think are speaking out about this stuff in a way and share their stuff and tell other people because even if you're sharing to 5 people and they share to 5 people, then, we that's how we build. We build by organizing within our own communities. Show
yeah,
up to protests, We're doing a big protest on May Day on Thursday. Everyone is going to be out in the streets. Go find your local protest, make a sign, be out there. It makes you feel like you're in community with people who care. And also, it's showing, people like Rachel Maddow are showing all the protests that are happening to everyone out there, being like, you can't just get away with this. We're not going to shut up.
yeah,
Another practical thing that I think is really important to do that a lot of people think, it's like a collective action problem. People are like, well, I don't need to do that. Other people are going to call their representatives. No, you have to call your representatives. You have to make it a point to call your representatives, your members of Congress, your senator, no matter which side of the aisle they fall on, to voice how you feel because they track that stuff. It matters. It impacts the way they vote. And they start getting scared if they get flooded with calls. They're like, oh god, I really can't vote again. There are Republicans who are not going to be able to support this budget because they know how many people in their state are on Medicaid. And so I think like this is how we make change in the long run, by expressing ourselves and voicing our
Yeah,
opinions and making sure people know. Um and then like on more of a like, just collective level, I think everyone
yeah,
needs to, just to remember to like the whole point of this is to overwhelm you, to make you feel hopeless,
yeah.
to feel as though there's nothing you can do. And the reality is that's what they're trying to do. And you can't let hope fall away. You can't become hopeless. Every day you have to wake up and say, okay, what little action can I do today to make it feel like I'm doing something, I'm making a difference, whether it's calling a representative, calling a friend, just doing something to organize in your own community. Mariama Kaba, my one of my favorite abolitionist writers, says hope is a discipline, and it's so true. Like we have to
Yeah.
wake up every day and continue to fight and not lose hope, because if we lose hope, then that's how they win.
I kind of want to build off of that a little bit because I think for me, resistance can take so many different forms, but being in community is like, as you were saying, is one of the most important things that you can possibly do. There are so many times where I think feeling isolated, being isolated is actually like one of the more contributing factors to that hopelessness feeling that people do end up getting. All the doom scrolling, people think like, oh, what can I do about this? How can I actually make an impact? How can I actually be a part of any meaningful change? All of that kind of gets dulled a little bit when you find yourself out in the community doing things with people, trying to find different ways that you can organize together. That to me is like one of the strongest ways that we can kind of like overcome all of this because we realize, as we always do, that collectively you have more power than you do individually, right? And yes, I echo your sentiments about like needing to call your reps all the time, especially if you live in a Republican state or in a Republican district. Don't let that dissuade you.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you are one of the constituents there, absolutely flood their phone lines. Like they will take note of that regardless of the fact if you're in a deep red district or not. Because I know a lot of people don't live, like in a place where a Democrat is a representative. I know that I don't. So it's very important to be doing these things. And, also, again, as you were saying before, make sure that you're sharing information. I think that sharing information on, like whatever platform you use, particularly whether it's Substack or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, I think there are so many times where people legitimately just don't know what's going on. The algorithms that we all kind of live in create these kind of like these little bubbles for us, that the social media tech overlords kind of give to us. So there are some people who are online who legitimately never see so many of these pieces of news unless they happen to come across it, maybe because you or somebody else that they knew shared it. And that's how they came across it because their feeds are so isolated away from the news, which is something, it's a whole separate problem as far as I'm concerned
Yeah.
about like how we are actually getting our information on all these apps, right? So yes,
But
please share information as much as humanly possible. Absolutely.
absolutely. And that's why being here matters. Everyone here, make sure you're following, subscribe to both of us. There's like, I think, three dots up at the top that you can click on and just like follow both of us. It's really easy. And, we're both trying to combat misinformation out there, to share the
Yes.
truth, to like be out there almost every day. I mean, I see your content almost every single day. I try to post a
Hey,
lot
there we go.
too.
Yeah.
And like really that stuff, it matters so much. And that's why I think Substack is so great, because we're not subject to algorithms that we've said some keyword. Meta platforms like Instagram
God,
and Facebook
it's
hate the
so
word
bad.
abortion. So if
Yes.
I use the word abortion in a video that I'm talking about, restrictions, all of a sudden my video gets seen by 1,000 people, when 200,000 people across their platforms have chosen to follow. More than, if you think about
Right.
Threads and Facebook and Instagram, I have hundreds of thousands of people who've chosen to follow me, and yet they don't see my content because I've used the word abortion. And so like, it's just, that's why it's so important that we're all here. And so like, thank you
Yes.
to everyone who is subscribed to both of us and following, and even here for this live discussion. Really appreciate you all.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you coming here and having this live discussion with me today. I think it's so important for all of us. This is honestly, I gotta say, I didn't get a chance to tell you this before we went live, but I hope it's not a big deal to tell it to you now. But I think that what the right has an advantage over the left is that they are a much more, I guess, like I don't know, cohesive ecosystem. Like they are constantly propping each other up. They are going on each other's shows and finding different ways to like promote different personalities that are on their side of the political spectrum. And unfortunately, that helps their disinformation kind of get spread even more places. And I think that in a lot of ways, content creators who are more on the left find themselves to be unfortunately more like individualistic. And I've been trying to do my absolute best to do what I can to like just like reach out to other creators and be like, hey, do you want to do something? Hey, do you want to work here? Like, I think we need to kind of come together because if we are ever going to actually stand up to fascism and stand up to all of the different things that the Republicans and the right leaning people in this country are trying to do, I think we need to have a more powerful effort to combat their narratives, to combat their agenda. So I really appreciate you coming on today and having this conversation with me. I hope that we get to do more of these in the future because I really do think that more
Absolutely.
of us need to be doing these things together.
And I appreciate you and all you do, and thank you for the encouragement to, make my way over to Substack. I'm so
Yeah,
grateful for you. And it's true. I think you're absolutely right. Like a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So
yeah,
on the left, like we really need to all like come together to make sure that we don't devolve into a full-on fascist dictatorship.
absolutely. Was there any other story that you wanted to talk about before we get out of here?
I think we've talked about most of it. I really think like reminding everyone like your voice is your power,
Yeah,
use it on social media, use it to call your representatives, really get involved in your local community, and
yeah.
follow both of us and subscribe so we can keep doing these and keep spreading the word.
Absolutely. I am going to be having some more lives later this week. I think I'm going to be having another one tomorrow night with another creator who I really admire over on Instagram. Her name's Sadia. She'll be joining me tomorrow night. Have another one on Friday as well. And hopefully, I'll be having another one with Eliza in the out to distant future. So make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any of those. And really appreciate everyone in the comments for dropping their comments here today. So hope to see you all in the next video.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Desmond. This was so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Make sure you follow Eliza. Make sure you subscribe. I love her newsletter. Make sure that you are checking it out so you don't miss anything that she is putting out there. And we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.